All right, picture this for a second. Imagine an empire so unfathomably vast that a single horseman could ride continuously for months, just crossing these massive cinematic landscapes, ancient cities, and brutal deserts, and he'd still be entirely under the same flag. Just look at this number, 24 million square kilometers. I mean, that is literally more than twice the size of the Roman Empire at its absolute peak. When we're talking about this era, we're talking about a scale of conquest that shattered kingdoms and transformed continents with sweeping, almost unimaginable force.
But, and this is a massive but, that staggering expansion came with a terrifying human cost. 40 million people. To put that into perspective, that was nearly 10% of the entire global population at the time. The devastation was so immense, so absolute, that researchers have actually found something truly astonishing. The sudden abandonment of all these massive areas of farmland allowed vast forests to completely regrow. And this regrowth absorbed so much carbon from the atmosphere that it literally contributed to a measurable drop in global temperatures. Crazy, right?
Welcome to this explainer, Genghis Khan, Crucible to Conquest. Today, we're exploring the incredible power of one man's relentless ambition. And listen, this isn't some mythological story about a two-dimensional monster. Instead, we're looking at a deeply human, historically grounded narrative of a man who was forged by literally the most hostile environment on Earth. A man born not in a palace, not among scholars or kings, but out on the cold, empty edges of the world.
Section 1. The Merciless Steppe.
So, to really understand the man, we have to plunge right into the freezing Mongolian steppe back in 1162. Picture these endless, sweeping grasslands just stretching way beyond the horizon. There are no cities, no walls, no farms. Just this agonizingly beautiful but completely merciless wilderness where winter temperatures routinely plummeted below -40°C. There's no central government here, no safety net. We start with a boy originally named Temujin. He was around 9 years old when his father, who was a minor chief, was poisoned by a rival tribe. And instead of getting protection, he and his mother were ruthlessly abandoned by their own clan. Stripped of his nobility, this young boy is left completely alone on the steppe. He's forced to survive by gathering wild plants, eating roots, and catching rats. Hunger just became this constant, agonizing companion.
And unfortunately, the suffering only compounded from there. As a teenager, Temujin was actually tracked down and captured by the rival Taichud tribe. In a deeply humiliating and agonizing punishment, they locked this heavy wooden yoke around his neck. Think about that. They grounded the future conqueror of the world as a desperate, helpless slave. For almost anyone else in history, this dramatic low point, that would have been the end of the story. But for Temujin, fear simply became a teacher.
Using the absolute darkness of night as his shield, Temujin makes this incredibly daring escape, literally hiding in the freezing waters of a river just to evade his captors. And while he's out there, he finds strangers who are actually willing to risk their own lives to hide him. This taught him a foundational lesson. Loyalty could be stronger than blood. And that realization, it fueled an incredible rise. Later, when his wife, Berthe, was kidnapped by the Merkit tribe, Temujin didn't have a massive army or wealth. So what does he do? He goes out and builds a powerful alliance to rescue her. By the time he's 20, he's survived starvation, slavery, and betrayal. The steppe threw everything it had at him, and he survived.
Section 2. Rise of the Universal Ruler.
So between the 1180s and 1206, Temujin inherited absolutely nothing. But he begins systematically uniting the scattered warring tribes of the steppe. His greatest weapon was actually his profound psychological understanding of people. And this led to a bitter ideological clash. On one side, you have Jamukha, Temujin's childhood blood brother, who fiercely believed in traditional aristocratic rule. Where your bloodline dictates your entire future. On the other side, Temujin was instituting a radical meritocracy. He totally rejected nobility. Under his command, a loyal shepherd who showed courage on the battlefield could rise way higher than the son of a chief. Ability and loyalty mattered way more than ancestry. And for a society built entirely around ancient tribal bloodlines, this was a massive revolutionary shift.
See, Temujin wasn't just assembling a massive raiding party, he was building a highly disciplined state. He established the Yasa. This was a strict legal code that punished theft and demanded absolute discipline. And amazingly, it applied equally to everyone, even himself. Plus, he fiercely protected merchants and trade routes. While other leaders were just robbing caravans for a quick buck, he realized that commerce brought vital intelligence, advanced technology, and lasting prosperity. But this ideological war ultimately had to end.
and it culminated in a deeply emotional climax. Temujin finally defeats his old friend Jamuka. When captured, Jamuka absolutely refuses to submit. Instead, he asks for a death without bloodshed, which was a final, honorable execution according to ancient steppe tradition. And Genghis Khan granted his request. The brotherhood that began in the total innocence of childhood ended in a solemn, tragic execution.
With his rivals defeated, the year 1206 marks a colossal turning point. The leaders of the newly united Mongol tribes gather at this massive political meeting called the Kurultai, and there, the 44-year-old Temujin receives his new title, Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. For the very first time in history, the sprawling landscape of Mongolia was completely united under a single, unstoppable leader. And with his homeland finally secured, Genghis Khan shifts his gaze south.
Section 3. The World Aflame.
The world was literally about to catch fire. The Mongols' first target was the Jin dynasty in northern China, which was one of the most technologically advanced civilizations on Earth at the time. 90 million people lived within its sprawling cities and towering walls. By all conventional logic, a nomadic cavalry from the steppe was absolutely not supposed to be able to defeat them. Conquering a population and infrastructure of this magnitude required sheer tactical genius and a complete reinvention of how warfare was even waged. And the Mongol military machine? It moved with terrifying speed. We're talking cavalry firing arrows with deadly accuracy while riding at a full gallop. They orchestrated these elaborate fake retreats, feigning total panic just to draw overconfident enemies out of formation before completely surrounding them. They weaponized psychological warfare, spreading horrific rumors of their cruelty to force cities to surrender without even a fight. And crucially, they absorbed their enemies, using captured engineers to build advanced siege weapons. Between 1211 and 1215, they utterly broke the Jin defenses, and their magnificent capital, Zhangdu, was captured and burned right to the ground.
But the true horror of absolute war was unleashed further west, and it was sparked by a fatal act of hubris. Genghis Khan actually sought commerce with the Khwarezmian Empire in Central Asia, so he sent trade envoys. Well, the Khwarezmian Shah arrested and executed them. When Genghis Khan sent diplomats to demand justice, they were killed too. The Shah had insulted a man who viewed the murder of his ambassadors as an absolutely unforgivable crime. The retribution was just apocalyptic. The Mongol armies descended like a relentless storm. By 1220, Samarkand, one of the world's most magnificent cities with 500,000 residents, fell in a matter of days. And by 1221, the great cities of Merv and Nishapur were completely erased from the map. The human toll here is just chilling. Historical accounts estimate that around 700,000 people were slaughtered in Merv over just a few agonizing days. In Nishapur, the destruction was so absolute that chronicles claim Genghis ordered even the cats and dogs to be killed. The Khwarezmian Shah, the guy who had foolishly provoked this wrath in the first place, he watched his empire turn to ash before fleeing across deserts, eventually dying entirely alone on a small island in the Caspian Sea.
Section 4. A sudden end. So the Mongol war machine had pressed deep into Eastern Europe, their devastating armies in Poland and Hungary, leaving monarchs terrified that the literal end of the world had arrived. And then, abruptly, they just vanished. The sudden retreat actually had nothing to do with the defeat on the battlefield. Thousands of miles away on the steppe, Genghis Khan was dead. Following strict Mongol law, his loyal generals and their armies had to immediately halt their campaigns and return to the homeland, to convene a new Kurultai and manage the succession of the empire.
When we look back at what he accomplished, the efficiency is just staggering. Listen to this. In just 25 years, Genghis Khan conquered more territory than the mighty Roman Empire did in 4 centuries, 400 years. And he achieved this unprecedented feat with an army that rarely exceeded 100,000 men. He completely rewired the globe, connecting east and west through trade, communication, and of course, ruthless conquest.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. The story of the boy who survived on roots and rats only to become the universal ruler leaves us with a profound contradiction. Yes, he was the architect of incomprehensible devastation, erasing entire civilizations and millions of lives. Yet he also enforced universal laws, established vast trade networks, and connected the known world in ways that permanently altered human history. So, I'll leave you with this. The greatest mystery of Genghis Khan is not how much he destroyed, but how much did he build.